What I'm going to do now is give you some diatonic chord progression building blocks for the key of C. And as I said in the previous lesson, I'm going to develop a course that's really comprehensive. It'll be overwhelming, actually, because we're going to talk about all kinds of progressions, link diatonic triads together with different bass notes. It's huge. But what I want to present to you right now, I'm going to assume that you haven't been playing the guitar very long, and this is all rather new to you. My goal is to have you become reasonably proficient at some building blocks, learning some chords, being able to strum, but these building blocks will be chord progressions and segments of chord progressions that you'll encounter in playing a lot of tunes, because that's why you picked up the guitar. You want to play some music. All right, so you have, in this lesson, you have a chart that shows these little two-chord progressions. And if you look at it, it's really mathematically quite obvious what's going on. We have 6 diatonic triads, the 1, 4, and 5, which are majors, the 2, 3, and 6, which are minors. And these are grouped together so that you can have a number of different variations, but it's always centered around one of the chords. One of the chords is static, and then you're moving to the other options. So obviously, if you have 6 different chords available, and one of them is static, you'll get 5 in each group, right? So let's look at the first group. In this case, the 1 chord will be home bass as far as your ear is concerned. Now the first one is labeled 1 and then 2. A little pop quiz. What chords would that be based on what you learned in the previous lesson? If you said C and D minor, you are correct. Okay. Now you could play this so many different ways. You could play it really slow, which if you're just a beginner, just do that. And remember level 1, it could just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Let's play along with the drum track. Give you a slow tempo back to 66, I believe is what we had in the previous lesson. And we'll play along with this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I know it's a snail's pace, but hey, that's okay for you if you're just starting out. Okay, so all you beginners, that's what you're going to do. 2, 3. So you strummed it for 1 beat, and then what did you do? You gave yourself 3 beats to change chords. What's level 2? Strumming it for 2 beats, giving yourself 2 beats to change chords. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. There's level 1, 2, 3. Now here's 1, 2, change, and so on. I've already covered this in depth in earlier courses or earlier lessons in this course. So we're going to skip that. Let's bump it right up to a little quicker tempo. Now we're at 110 beats per minute. This will be the other jam track that you get. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what am I doing here? If I kill the drum machine, I'm getting that same driving feel because this is a rock-oriented thing, isn't it? It's not so relaxed. It's driving forward a little bit. Now, that's not to say that I couldn't just play this. 2, 3, 4. A nice, relaxed blanket of sound. Remember your principles. You've got to know your options. If you use just consecutive downstrokes, you get a relaxed feel, even though it's the same tempo, because you're playing the 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Or if you want it to drive, you play those consecutive downstrokes. And then, of course, we've got that backbeat. So if I'm playing, and I want to really drive this sound across, if I wanted to emulate and convey what this was about, and I didn't have the drum machine, you said, okay, Brad, I'm going to sing a song, start a groove. I go. I'm using that palm slap on 2 and 4. We've already covered all that, but I'm showing you how to tie together your techniques as you get these chords going. Okay, the sky's the limit. You could play this 1-2 progression so many different ways, and it's up to you to continue to do that, and don't quit. I mean, every day, try to find a different way to play this 1-2 progression. Our next progression is 1 and 3. there's a little theory trick going on here. I'm not going to explain it. When we start linking it together to other chords, if I went... it's easier for you to hear it probably as a 1-3. Now, if you don't understand what I just said, I would totally understand why you didn't understand it. The 3 chord is the weakest chord of all 6 of these. It's more of a passing chord, and there's a bit of ambiguity with this 1-3 progression. For now, you don't need to worry about what I'm saying. You might say, why are you even bothering saying it? Well, as you learn more theory, you'll realize how some of these progressions could sound like they're coming from another key. They'd be different numbers in another key. I'm just throwing that out there. You don't need to worry a whole lot about that, but get proficient at playing C to E minor. Now, while we're on this subject, let's say you had a tune that was just vamping between C and E minor. Vamping just means a reoccurring chord progression. It can be one chord for that matter. You're just playing the same thing on and on ad infinitum, okay? So you have a C chord and then an E minor. If you use your fingerings that you've learned, you don't have any pivot fingers, do you? Or guide fingers. Now here's an option. You could do this. Here's a C chord, and then you could go to an E minor chord by bringing your 3rd finger back. That's called a crossed fingering. It's awkward. It has its merits, but one of the downsides is you could get a nasty squeak. It also limits some of your hand position. Well, here's another way to look at this. I could play that C chord using my 4th finger instead of my 3rd finger. Then I could already have that 3rd finger in place. I'm just doing this to open up your mind. Now, if you're an absolute beginner, you don't need to worry about this so much. But there are times when you would change fingerings for a particular tune. But here's another option. I could play this C chord, finger it 4th finger, 3rd finger, 1st finger, and have my 2nd finger already in place. Then that's really easy. 2 pivot fingers, the 2nd and 3rd fingers. I'm just holding the E minor and I just come up and down with the 1st and the 4th fingers. There's a certain amount of independence here. You see me move my fingers easily. Well, that comes from just practice. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that you can have variations in fingerings. Let's move to our next progression in this little subgroup, a 1 to a 4. One of the most common progressions. All right, even if we're playing our rock thing here. And there I'm kicking. Remember we talked about anticipating the chord change, pushing it onto the and. It's called a pushed figure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. So that could be an upstroke, it could be a downstroke. Just experiment with that. Next progression, C to G. Straight ahead, right? The final one in this group would be C to A minor, a 1-6. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay. What I suggest you do is that when you play one of these 2 chord progressions, connections like this, and it triggers a song in your head, put it in a little compartment and say, oh, okay, that song sounds like those 2 chords put together. It doesn't matter what key it's in, you'll see that down the road, but those are the connections that involve the 1 chord as the home bass chord. Let's move right on through the rest of them here. Our next subgroup would be the D minor being home bass. All right, so go ahead and listen to this. That's a 2-3. I'm playing the D minor, E minor, right? Okay, the next one would be D minor, F. That's a 2-4. Now this one. That sounds pretty typical. Sounds like a jazz progression, sounds like a pop progression. That's a 2-5. That should be one of those that goes right into the little compartment, like. Sounds like some Latin, smooth jazz, things like that. That's a 2-5. Now here's a nice progression. A 2-6. D minor and A minor. Okay, just to show you what you can do, we're just kind of vamping on these two chords back and forth. After you get a handle on that, you want to get creative, right? That's what your homework is, your assignment. So you might go somewhere else. Your ear should probably lead you there. After you listen to these two chords for a while, and notice I said listen. If you're not listening while you're practicing, you're messing up. That's the primary goal, is to listen while you play and get these sounds in your head. You might want to say, there's my 2, 6, 1, 5. And you just mix them up different ways, and you'll say, wow, I hear a song in my head. You'll sing a little melody, get a tape recorder or something, record yourself, and start getting creative. So our final one here is just the reverse of the first one in the first group, right? Our first progression was C to D minor, where C was home bass. In this subgroup, the D minor is the home bass, the street key. So right here. And you see, you might want to spend more time on the D minor so your ears hear that as home bass. All right, quickly, let's go to the next group. Now, the next group uses that 3 chord as home bass. And remember, I told you a few minutes ago that the 3 is a weak one. I want you to become proficient in each of these building blocks. Then you'll not stumble when you have to play any combination of these 6 diatonic triads. Quickly, we have E minor, F. Now here's an opportunity to change a fingering. You could just move down a fret and play the E minor with your 3rd and your 4th fingers. Makes sense? And likewise, you might use it when you go to the next one, which is E minor to G. It's a 3-5. Because I'm going up, and instead of playing a G chord with the open position, I'm playing the R chord. Or if I decide to play the E minor with a normal fingering, I go to a G chord, my 2nd finger's a pivot. Do you remember when I gave you that little explanation I said you don't need to concern yourself with? This category is the one that really, they sound like they're in another key. So don't worry about that. I know it seems strange I say, listen to me, but then don't listen to me. It'll all come clear the longer you practice. All right, let's look at this one. E minor to A minor, that's a 3-6. Make sure that you start going somewhere else with these. Because that's when what I'm saying will come into vision. It'll become clear. You'll say, oh yeah, when I go to those other chords, I sense that it's shifting keys from the way you hear it. Okay, so that was the E minor to the C, right? E minor to D minor. All right, so that's that subgroup. Let's look at the next one. Here we have the 4 chord as home bass. That's a 4-5 progression. That should be one of those little, should click, light should go off and say, oh, that sounds like a lot of songs I've heard. Now, even though I'm not strumming, I'm still playing those chords, doing some hybrid picking, whatnot. A 4-6. You see what I just did? I stuck a chord in between. I stuck the connector. If I'm on the 6 and I'm heading back to the 4, I could go throw the 5 in there. So those are some little things that you should experiment with. If you're playing chords that are every other chord, try putting the chord in between. What I mean by that is if I'm on 6 and I'm heading to 4, there's a 5 in between. If I'm on a 4 and I'm heading to a 6, throw the 5 in. You can do that on any of these progressions. Let's look at 4 to 1. You hear these sounds? That's probably another one that you'll say, well, that triggers some songs that I've heard. How about 4 to 2? See what I did? I went 5-1 after I went 4-2 to help you drive it back to the key of C. That's one of those that can sound like it's in another key. Finally, you have 4 to 3, right? Okay, you're starting to get the hang of this. Now, I'm holding your hand through this first time through in the key of C. In the future keys, we're just going to do a little quicker because you should understand these patterns. Our next subgroup uses the 5 chord as the home bass, as the street key. That would be 5-6, G to A minor, right? 5, back to 1. G to C. Okay, the next one. 5, 2, 5, 2. Okay, 5 to 3. See what it is? Stuck a 4 and a 1 in there. 4, 1. There, I put that connector in there, right? I'm just creating progressions, and I'm hearing melodies in my head. You could just sing lyrics and stuff. Just be improvisational, just spur of the moment. And finally, the 5 to the 4. You know, if you ever heard of a group called the Kinks, maybe you'll recognize that song. It's a 5-4, 5-4. Our final group uses the 6 chord as home bass. We're going to go 6 to 1. And you hear I'm playing that rolling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, or 1 triplet, 2 triplet, that waltz thing, right? My bass notes. How do I know how to walk, how to connect the dots? Well, it's that same thing that I told you about chords. If you're on a 6 chord, for example, and you're heading up to the 1, 8 is the octave of 1. So what's in between? 7, and 7 is a B note. So A, B, C, there's my bass line. So you always have this bass note in between every other chord, and it's a great connector in your bass line. Let's do a 6-2. I'm just making music right here. I'm improvising. I did not rehearse this. I just had to go somewhere else because I think it gets a little boring with just 2 chords. That's where you use the other chords in the key, right? Okay, let's go 6-3. 4, 5, back to 6. It's up to you. You can come up with a lot of great music this way. Let's go 6-4. So I went 6-4, 6-4, right? Then I went to 1, 5, then back to 4 as sort of a release from the boredom of that. And that also helped bring it back around to my initial 6, 6, 4. Now hit a 1, 5, 4. Start ramping up. You see? This is where you come up with these progressions. Let's go from 6 to 5. Do you hear what I did then? I went back to the 1 chord to break the monotony, to get a little release from that first thing. Because if I just go all day, it's going to get a little boring, right? So I go through 3 times. Then try going to some other chords in there. All right, so I have shown you all kind of examples here where I took just these 2 chord vamps, these connections I call them, chord connections, use them as a building block and then branched out. Make sure you study this lesson, that you really utilize these chords and you mix up these 6 diatonic triads in the key of C as many different ways as you can. And when you come across a progression that it feels good to you and you say, I like that, write down what you did and also chart out or actually record it also. So you know exactly how many beats you played each chord and things like that, and catalog these and keep them as jam sessions and jam tracks, because this is how you get into the music from the inside out. You learn how these chords fit together, but you have your ears connected to it. It isn't just cerebral business, okay? So that was it for the key of C.